Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. A little bit of a late start today, but that's technology for you. So today we're going to meet Gina Bria. Caroline Mace, John Donahue, Masaru Emoto, and C.S. Lewis are just a few of the authors whose books influenced Gina's life journey. She is the founder of the Hydration Foundation, which is recognized as a leading resource for hydration, science, and education through the new science of optimum hydration. She's also a cultural anthropologist, nutritionist, writer, party lover, and science opera paper cutout creator. I don't know what that is, but we'll find out later. Gina, welcome.
I'm so excited that you asked me to talk. I just love
I'm so glad you made it.
Great.
So you presented Emerging Water Science at the UN Conference on Water, and you spoke on the role of water in soil for climate recovery at the COP28 Global Climate Conference. You're an anthropologist, as I said, you're a nutritionist, you throw parties, you take walks with a pocket microscope, and you do this strange thing with science opera paper cutouts. When do you get time to read?
I live for reading. I read every day. I read every night, especially before I fall asleep. And I care deeply about books. I'm an anthropologist, so my first opening part of my career was spent on looking at rituals around the world. And to do that, to understand that, I had to do a lot of reading in places I never would have thought I'd end up in, like medieval monasteries. And it took a while, Sandie, for all of that intellectual work, or reading and engaging in thinking about other ways of being a human, until I had this amazing insight. It took me all that time to realize that all rituals are enacted upon the body. And so it moved the body out of sort of like the ritual sphere for me and into front and center as the place to determine, discover, and investigate our own spirituality. So that's a link that I'd really love to bring to our whole conversation today about how water and the body, and being ourselves a body of water, and books being bodies of knowledge, and all of that getting packaged in this essence to explore and to be our spiritual journey really is about discovering the knowledge of our own body and investigating that. So I'll pause there, just kind of setting up the arc.
Are you still with us? You froze there, Gina. Can you hear me, Gina? Gina, we're having a little bit of freezing going on. Can you hear me?
Sandie, our connection. Yeah, I have.
You know, this is the second time this has happened to us.
And I promise you, I'm on the strongest number of bars. I'm in a room. Oh.
I don't know what to say. Let's keep going and see if we can actually get this. Otherwise, if it gets too bad, I know that you've got so much great stuff to tell us.
Yes.
And your books are really interesting. I want to be sure that we cover all of them, but because we had a late start, our time has been truncated a bit.
That's
But let's
okay.
see if
I
we
can
can
talk
keep going.
I know your listeners are fast listeners too, but I'd like to really open up with the idea of John O'Donohue, uh,
Yes,
who is
absolutely. The
an
inner
Irish,
landscape of
yes,
beauty. Yeah.
beautiful Irish poet. And what he did is help us understand that if you explore and understand how to cultivate beauty, it will immediately lead you to being in love. And he did that through landscape. He asked you to look at the landscape around you and discover how much you could love it. And that's why I walk around with a pocket microscope. I'm
I'm
trying
glad
to be
you.
in love with my walks, with the flowers, with the trees, with the sky, the clouds, the vapors, every single thing. These walks are engagements to find out what is beautiful. And what that does is beauty then ignites this possibility for love, because we can't help falling in love with what is beautiful. And
And when we're in love, everything is beautiful.
and when we're in love, it's like a filter which allows
Yes.
us, or maybe a clarification would be a much better word. It's an aperture which opens up what there is to love that's
Yeah.
available to us. And
Yeah.
again, where I want to lead us over the arc of all these books is leading us back to our own bodies as the site to be the most in love with. And that is a very different kind of concept than what you often hear, where this flesh is against spirituality. And all the books that I chose are to lead us back into this experience of receiving love. We're part of the whole ecological biology. And if we become in love through this internal vessel that we have with our own bodies, learn how to love them as we receive them in whatever form we currently are, whatever we don't we think we're decrepit and aging. If we actually love each section and day of our life, this opens up an incredible way to be in the world and to love the world and to receive the love of the whole world. That's a lot.
Okay, so you have just switched the order that I had.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you tell me what is
Right.
the second book on your list.
Well, the second book then is goes to the idea from O'Donohue, to the idea of of the creator placing us in this vessel. This isn't a problem like the problem, mind body problem that Descartes would have explored. This is the source of walking into creation, and that
So
our yeah, go ahead.
what is the title?
The title is I forgot which book were we doing next.
Well, you're talking
Yes,
about the second, but I've got a
material
different
creation.
layout.
Right. The material creation is what we are supposed to be falling in love with. It's not an exception away from the fresh. So the book that I chose to really reflect that is Alexander Schmeimann's From
Okay,
the
for
Life
the
of
life of the
World.
world.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness, what a writer. The book supposedly is about walking through the sacraments of the Catholic or Anglican Church. He's actually Romanian priest from the Orthodox tradition. But what he does at every point, he starts out the whole book with man is a hungry beast. A man is hungry. And then he layers into that the fact that we need that hunger. We need to be fed by the world every day in order to find out more about it. So what I'm trying to go for, Sandie, in this whole conversation is to help us to fall in love with the material world, ourselves included, and that this is not separate from being spirituality. This is the pathway to our larger, more expanded self. So um, so that's for how I was connecting those two books. But what else have you
Okay.
got for me on your
Well,
sequence?
I've got as number 3, and
Mhm.
tell me if it's in the right place. Nothing's in the right place
Oh
at the
yes,
moment.
we'll make it
An
in the right
ancient
place.
treasure map
Yes.
on how to enter
Oh,
your own soul.
oh my
That's
God.
Entering the Castle, Caroline
Entering
Mace.
the Castle, Carolyn Meese updated the work of Teresa of Avila, Saint Teresa,
Yeah.
which she had under her care an entire convent monastery. Again, this is coming out of my medieval training, how to help these young women become their full spiritual selves, how to find their soul, but also how to be cloistered in a place where they became so effective at their own souls that they could then enhance and support and love the entire world. And Carolyn Meese is already an extraordinary soul on this planet. We're lucky to have her. But in this book, she shows an extraordinary sensibility where she's able to take Teresa of Avila's instructions for her young novices and turn them into a roadmap for the modern soul to literally do this today, do this the next day. It's an actual roadmap to how to investigate this inner self, our own selves, and she, in that inquiry, asks us questions that allows us to meditate on the blind spots and the blinders that our culture puts up for us. So I find it extraordinary.
Tell me that you didn't read these books in this order that you're giving them to us, but you have created this order because of the arc.
Right.
So, okay, so I'm interested to know how each one of them, landed with you.
They're still
at that time, because it's not a clear,
Right.
you went from this, which gave you an aha, which then went to the next
This is
aha.
an excellent point you're making, because these expansions, and they come, they're not sequenced in the way we would expect. Like, this happened to me, then I went to this, then I went to this. There's a circular thinking about this, where it's a spiral and you're returning again to points that you just rode over the first time, and this time they lift you up to the next level. For example, all of the work I did on looking at ritual around the world. What is ritual for? What does it do? It helps us into new identities. That's basically, we go from being a single person to a married person, perhaps, or becoming a mother, or becoming a grandparent, or an uncle, or going through men's initiations. These are rituals that are launching us spirally up to the next level of our place in our social environment. But also, every one of those is a spiritual call. And those spiritual calls are always about your personal identity, extremely important, coming into our tribal circle to you can be the only one who can contribute in this spiral at this moment. So the sequence of books for me are spiral. And again, I even mentioned in our little conversation back and forth that often I'm returning to these books again and again. Some of these books I literally travel with. They go in my backpack. I have them reading them, not just front to back, but over and over again.
So what's the fourth book in the spiral? Is it getting involved with God?
It's getting involved with God. And Ellen Davis is a theology professor at Duke. She trained many of our, you'd know the names if I said them, but one I'll mention right now is Krista Tippett, who does the On Being podcast that really brought spirituality back to a whole generation of young people who were hungry, ready to hear, but not quite know where to go. Ellen Davis wrote a book called Getting Involved with God. She takes on the toughest theological problems in a series of 27 essays. She's right in the wrestling ring. There is nobody she doesn't go towards, including the Psalms that insist that you kill the infants of your enemies. All the things that happened to Job, the most egregious and complaining Proverbs or Psalms. She goes through the whole Testament, and she looks at, for example, she starts with the sacrifice of Isaac, and what a place to start, right? At every point in these very deep theological conversations, she brings us back to the point that the Creator loves its creature. The Creator longs for us. longs to be in relationship with us and has to go through all this craziness that we are bringing to the story. And then the final setting of all of her work is to return us as creatures in a creation, that all of this is not only about us personally as creation, but us as our place in creation, and how important it is that we again fall in love with the world, the material world, fall in love with the way fabric feels and the way frankincense smells and the food in our mouth and what our teeth can do and how our eyes are optics that receive the sun, the blazing sunlight, and turn it into information in ourselves and runs our entire biology. So again, I'm talking in part, Sandie, from an anthropology point of view, which is always holding the biology of us, the biology set in a system of creation, and that all these evolutionary channels that we're experiencing are part of our spiritual spire. We're spiraling up evolutionarily, but none of this is anonymous. Biology is not anonymous. It actually spent a lot of time collecting you together with your molecules, making you and positioning you to drive forward all of us together. I just think that's remarkable.
You're actually sparking some thoughts within me, because yes, we can all complain about our bodies, especially as we get into later years, but without it we wouldn't be here.
Yes, and
It's
passionately for it,
yeah,
especially in its in its phases, because we don't know what happens and I will say, from the anthropology point of view, every culture revered a dead body. They were like, okay, this is something else is going on beyond this. And
yeah.
in the coming from the anthropology point of view, again, the cultural anthropology point is that we are the first culture that ever decided that it's a big void after this. I mean, no other human experience came to that conclusion. So it's a big challenge to
Yeah.
reclaim and become skilled
Yeah.
at having that kind of perspective. So as we age, and we're aging, this body is in an evolution, and we're busy backpedaling on don't want that, instead of discovering the gifts that each of those sections bring, and trusting that the whole process is a life process leading us somewhere to much bigger perspective of what a life is than just what's in.
So, book number 5, The Meaning of the City by Jacques Ellul.
Right. So now I've kind of set the tone, right? We talked about how important it is to love nature and be part of creation and believe that this is our spiritual path. And now we're stuck in cities. What are we going to do about that? Well, I think the creator had an answer for that too, because the whole, if you take the Bible as from Genesis to Revelation, which is what Jacques Ellul does in this book, and he notes that we start in the garden, that this is our natural environment. This is where our biology can most flourish. But the arc of the stories in the Bible end up in Revelation, where the ultimate place is this city on a hill. And that cities are about community. They are about being led out of the wilderness and into a much higher level, again, spiraling up to a much higher level of orchestras and symphonies and art museums and banquets. And we need this dense cloistering together, of drawing together of all of us in cities, in a cityscape idea of golden streets. That's where we're headed. And the meaning of the city is to live towards that sense of community, creativity, the heightened gifts that we are bringing, and living together in community around that. That's the idea of revelation. Isn't that? I think it's pretty powerful. It isn't just nature, it's also culture.
Yeah. So book number 6, Prayer by Ole Hallesby.
Ole Hallesby. So this was a Norwegian pastor who was writing in the 1930s. And boy, did they have their hands full between the Russians and the Germans and the political sphere of European politics at that time. He was making a case for the fact that prayer was not just about you and your personal requests, but again, he's kind of referring back to Teresa of Avila, which is this capacity to take our bodies, sit it in a room, sit it in a chair, take a walk, take this body and use it to and by the way, I'm including thoughts as part of our body. Let me just say that it's part of our vibrational, what this whole antenna thing is that we've got as a body. Using that to bring a channel the guidance for all of creation. So he's taking us out of the realm of personal requests. I really want fill in the blank. It might be better relationship with my daughter. It might be I need a red car. Whatever those stratas are, using that desire and moving it on to activity for others, and the belief that it has real impact and real power. So that book is the one I travel with. I never read it and not feel ready to pray, excited to pray, and and again solidly rooted in the idea that I am actually doing something here for my world and my people and my time. I think he was an amazing writer, very clear. You can't get a clearer, crisper writer on prayer than Ole Hallesby.
So the next book is one that I think everybody, actually not the next book, it's the one after that. The next book is one that I've never heard of before. Homo Ludens, a study of the play element in culture.
Yes. So Johannes Hunzinga was a theologian also from, I think he was from Copenhagen, he was Danish, and also writing during the Nazi occupation of Denmark. And his answer to this terrible ordeal that his country was going through was comedy. He really felt that playfulness and comedy is a spiritual imagination, a powerful weapon that we have to puncture the outlandish and inflated authorities. And boy, do we need that kind of attitude today, right? We need to just get in there. And the reason he felt that it was such a powerful political weapon and disseminator of power is because he believed that the chief purpose of man, of women, was to be playful. That this idea of being cheerful in the context of our environment overturns everything else that we suffer from. And I think play is it helps us be our true spiritual nature, to get playful. And that's, by the way, why I make all these little paper cutouts of science and like this is a way to sort of learn science, but at the same time be playful about it. And I do all these little operas, science operas for my friends for their birthday parties, or just to this playfulness is our spiritual nature. We were put in the garden to play and to and I think it's the highest thing that we can achieve, along with all the other animals, is to be a playful creature.
Well, I really don't think that, play should be, kept just for the young. I mean, you're right.
Absolutely.
You're
It's
right.
a
It's
sign of
nothing like having
yeah,
a good group of playmates that you can have fun with.
right. And I do think it's a sign of spiritual maturity to be a playful person, no matter what
Yes.
age.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, moving on. The next book is one that everybody will have heard about. And this is The Hidden Messages in Water by Masaru Emoto. That was published in 2005. And
Yes.
my goodness, he's really lit up the world.
I'm so I know it's not considered a spiritual book, but I want to say on behalf
But
of
it is.
first of all, he was a very playful man himself. And of course, his famous experiments were to freeze water into crystals and to look at those crystals and see what the context, the environment around them would do in terms of, again, going back to John O'Donohue, seeking beauty, seeking order, seeking regularity, seeking the symphonic unveiling of crystals. They were just beautiful, and that his great insight was that our speech, our thoughts, and our context can engender beautiful order in water. And that when we have disease or a negativity, an anxiety, that the water freezes. He even played discordant music to these dishes of water and then freeze them, and they would have very crumpled, very poor looking water
Yeah.
crystals on. I'm talking things that looks like snowflakes, right? They look like snow. They were forms of snowflakes. And why this is such extraordinary work is he was the first person to really realize or show that what's happening in water crystals, everyone knows what a snowflake looks like, is the same process that's happening inside our cells. So our cells, if you think of our cells as a petri dish and filled with water, the way we treat ourselves, and again, going back to our great theme today, which is how do we fall in love with our own bodies, the absolutely most essential spiritual act we could do. It's easy to love others. It's a little bit easier, maybe not so hard, but I love my granddaughter. But to love myself, to speak to myself, to bring beauty into my life, these are extraordinary acts of how we become not only a body but a soul, right? So his work for me is deeply spiritual because it
Yes.
shows that we're participating in making beauty
Yeah.
at every point. Whatever we say to our own bodies, we say to each other, how we vibrate back and forth between each other. And I know these are current, spiritual words, but they're actually based in science. We can now have not only Emoto's work, which was not considered scientific at the time, we now have not just frozen actions of thoughts and music on water. We have videos of it now with the work of John Stuart Reid, a beautiful
Mhm.
Englishman doing
Yes.
the original work with cymatics. So we can watch the frequencies go across and ricochet back and forth and create all these messages. Now, one tiny bit of information I'd like to drop in that this part of our conversation is that water, and we ourselves are bodies of water. We don't recognize it because we want to be a sack of water that we can hear the swishing in, but it doesn't isn't that way. The way we are bodies of water is that we're a collection of cells which make up tissues, and every one of those cells is a tiny sack of water. It is exactly the same as Dr. Emoto's petri dish, the
Yeah.
little clear dish. That's our cells. So they are literally responding. Water is the most sensitive material to all of the rest of creation. And that in that sensitivity, that water is carrying information to us. So when you step out into the sunlight and you receive through your ocular sockets, through your retina, what you're getting from the sun is information. And that then is about our whole biology. We're in a system. We're in a water system. And that whole system is changing information back and forth between you and me and each other in this conversation, and how we are living bodies of water ourselves. And we have access to, the history of information that's carried by water, and the future where we can engender our future by the way we think and talk. Quite.
And water has memory. And so our cells have memory. And if we're giving ourselves a lot of negative self-talk,
Mhm.
our cells will remember that.
They will. And
Yeah.
so I hope that, I don't know, I had one more book. I was hoping we could close, Sandie, with a tiny little.
You've got 2 more books.
Okay, let's talk about those, and then
You've got 2 more books, and yeah, we're almost out of time, actually.
okay.
We're going to have to be really quick. The Holy Order of Water,
Yes, this
healing
is
the waters and ourselves.
yes. So the Holy Order of Water is really one man's pilgrimage into creation and into spirituality by going to different watering holes, watering spots around the world. And that is something I'd really like to raise as a possibility for us and our future, that we could have more pilgrimages in our water, the water in our locales, wherever the water is, to go there, to commune with it, to say thank you, and to receive its information.
And the last book, The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis. What is this one doing here?
Well, that's the last book in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Mm.
And in that book, he does a beautiful job of rendering what happens after death. Because one of the children dies in that book. And what goes forward after that? He did an excellent job really drawing on from his training as a medievalist, what that whole concept is, that we also have a body past death. And this body is marked with everything we've been through. We bear the scars, the tears that we've cried have been collected, that this sacredness of the body is not forgotten even past death. It's recovered through the way we have our stories coming out of the medieval and Christian tradition. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Indeed.
Also be a body.
So normally we reserve the last 20 minutes of the show to talk about you and your work, and we don't have that 20 minutes. I do. You have to say one thing, because I've been sending out notices to my followers and telling them, you talk about eating water. Tell us what that is.
Yes. So
Quickly.
as an anthropologist, I looked at desert communities around the world that don't have water, so they should be dead. Everybody knows we have to have 8 glasses a day. What I discovered in looking at all those regions around the globe is that they were using food to hydrate with. And this is a very important part of our hydration chain that's fallen out. We all carry the huge water bottles everywhere, but the water locked in foods like watermelon. But in my desert research, it was aloe and cactuses and chia seeds, and dates turn out to be beautifully hydrating. Who knew? Because we're looking at water in a certain way. But once you realize that it's condensed in foods, also purified in foods, also mineralized in foods, it turns out that foods are the best water bottle we could possibly have. So you think of an apple and a bottle of water, and the apple is actually far more hydrating than
Yeah.
that flash of
Yeah.
liquid coming in.
And hydration is such an important thing. And in your book, Quench,
Yes.
you talk about how it can heal so many things in the body.
Well, if we discern how much water we are, but we're feeding in all this liquid, which is just running through our center and not getting absorbed by our tissues and then distributed, we see that our capacity, our cognitive capacity, even a 2% loss of hydration in your brain shuts down this higher realm of getting access to our wisdom, to the memory of water. All of those things happen because we ourselves are well hydrated bodies of water. So you can see why water to me is a spiritual pathway, the body, us as a body of water.
I can indeed. So there's so much more to talk about, which we don't have time for, but you are going to come on to what is going on in a few weeks' time, and we are going to talk about your book, Quench, and all of the things that you're doing right now. So I would say to everybody, check out the check out On Times, look at upcoming shows, and you'll find out when Gina will be back on What Is Going On. And I hope that we get the full hour on that show
I do too, and I know this was
because there's a lot to
this
cover.
was a sip, but what we just really opened is profound, that we ourselves are bodies of water. Water, loving our bodies as bodies of water is a pathway to our soul, and that we join all of creation in being bodies of water together. So what a set of ideas for us to sip from.
And what a great job you've done of giving me a perceptual shift
Oh,
because I've just suddenly seen the reason to love my body,
yes,
which
you're
I haven't been very kind to. So, Gina, thank you so much. I'm so sorry that
oh, not
we
at all.
lost so much time.
We're in the
I,
tech world, we get it, and you know what? What was said today is enough. We for now, right?
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you on What Is Going On in a few weeks' time.
Me too. I look forward.
And if you are a regular viewer of this show and you've signed up for the No BS Spiritual Book Club newsletter, then you'll know sooner when Gina will be on. So that's it for this week. Gina's book, Quench, Beat Fatigue, Drop Weight, Heal Your Body Through the New Science of Optimum Hydration, written with Dr. Dana Cohen, MD, is published by Hachette. For more information about Gina Bria and hydration, visit hydrationfoundation.org. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 Best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you to Gina Bria.
What a pleasure.